Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Saturday, September the 9th, 2023. As you might know, one of my interests in life is local politics, and every fortnight I go to a meeting of the City Council. At least I try not to miss any meetings. I can go in person. I can go via Zoom. I can call them by phone to make my public comment. And there is one person that pretty much always makes a public comment. And if you look at the minutes for previous City Council meetings going back years and years, there's always this one person that always makes public comments. And he used to live in this city, but now he has moved to Sioux Falls in South Dakota. But that doesn't stop him. He still makes public comments. And he comes over as being of a fairly conservative disposition. His public comments are often about wider issues going beyond the city, for example, illegal immigration, poor mathematics education, the fentanyl epidemic. But he is a real fan of his state's governor, who is Kristi Noem. As far as he's concerned, she is a role model of how you should run a state. In Seattle, there have been sort of issues regarding public order, particularly during the pandemic, and as far as he was concerned, if we had Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, in charge, we wouldn't be having these problems. And it's certainly true that she has made efforts to restrict protest, particularly in terms of the Keystone Pipeline. She put in anti-protest legislation, which I think was struck down as being illegal. So what I want to do today is I want to look at Kristi Noem's horoscope. She has been in the news recently. She is, I think, expected to endorse Donald Trump for president. And she's been seen as a potential vice presidential pick for Trump. So I thought it would be useful to look at her horoscope. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Saturday, September the 9th, 2023. So here is a chart for today. It's by and large pretty simple. It's pretty good. So you can see that the moon continues to be in Cancer. Now, yesterday I was talking about the fact that the moon was square Mars, and that was a bit of a problem. But now the moon has moved on from that square, and you can see that the moon is sextile the Sun, and it's sextile Jupiter. So there's a Sun-Jupiter trine. The Sun-Jupiter trine may not be exact, but now the moon is on its midpoint. So I do regard that as being very fortunate. The moon in sextile to the Sun and the Jupiter, and it's in Cancer. So it's a great day for being kind, for being warm, for being sympathetic, for engaging in fortunate and productive activity. And I think the basis of this activity will be one's people skills. It's relatively easy to get on with people. It's relatively easy to get people onto our side. And it may be a good time for taking initiatives, particularly of a social nature, where we have to get on, where we have to get on with people. That Venus, moon sextile Venus, moon sextile the Sun. So that moon sextile the Sun, that is especially fortunate because the moon and the sun and the moon have two male-female principles. The moon is strong in Cancer, and when they're in that that fortunate aspect, it supports life. It's life affirming, life enhancing, and of course, moon sextile Jupiter is just fortunate, and it's lucky. I think matters might be helped in terms of relationships by the fact that the North Node. So there's the North Node. The North Node is sesquiquadrate, making a 135-degree aspect to the Venus-Mars midpoint. So if you've got North Node aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint, that's very good for relationships in general. It's very good for being charismatic, and I suppose in terms of networking, some of us might be able to use our sex appeal to get our way, because Venus and Mars. Venus is a planet of female sexuality, as I say. Mars is a planet of male sexuality. You put them together. It's a very sexual, charismatic combination. And then you have the North Node aspecting the Venus-Mars aspect. You have North Node aspecting Venus-Mars. And, the North Node is about networking. It's about connections. And so it shows how we can develop connections by using our charms. So that's an added bonus for today. The only real downside is that, like yesterday, Mars is making a sesquiquadrate to Uranus. I warned you about yesterday. It is dangerous. It's accident prone. Be particularly careful with machinery. Be careful if you're driving. Be careful if you're using chainsaws, brush cutters, guns, whatever. Just be careful, and don't take risks. Mars sesquiquadrate Uranus can be about arguments that get out of control, that get really nasty. So don't pick fights. It's just not worth the effort. And it's not worth the risk. Anyway, let's now move on to my forecasts for the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for today, which is Saturday, September the 9th, 2023. Aries, there are things you don't want to do, but you're not communicating the fact. However, it's in your nature to be open and upfront, and if you keep things secret, you could cause needless disruption. So if you can't do something with good grace and a constructive attitude, don't do it at all. Taurus, you might feel that you're late to the party, that you've missed the main opportunities. That's not true, and circumstances are creating new chances for you. You just have to be open about what you want, and you shouldn't be afraid of making phone calls. A short journey could prove very useful. Gemini, things are fine, provided you do what's expected of you and you don't stray too far from the script. That's right, there is a script, and there's a limited scope for individual self-expression. You're supposed to focus on the details and not be distracted. And you should not use bad language. Boring, but profitable. Gemini, the moon, your ruler, is very well placed, being sextile both the sun and Jupiter. You're going to be lucky, and at the same time, your social skills are going to be great. You don't have to try. Just be yourself. This means that you should make an effort to meet people, and you shouldn't let shyness get in the way of a good opportunity. Leo, you don't have to feel responsible to anyone. Just be yourself and do what feels right. You'll get some attention if that's what you want, but there's no need to make an effort. In terms of work and career, you benefit from a useful aspect between the moon and Jupiter. Your private insights seem to be spot on. Virgo, you understand what you don't understand, and that gives you an advantage. It means that you won't make a fool of yourself, and you won't be too afraid or too embarrassed to seek out the answers from the people who know more than you. And one particular person can act as the linchpin for your future success. Libra, you really know how to make a good impression with the moon in a high-profile sector of your solar chart, making brilliant aspects to the Sun and Jupiter. You'll be charming and you'll have a spontaneous optimism that can grab everyone's attention. So make the most of the situation. Scorpio, you have a vision of the way things should be, and you won't be happy with second best. So elevate yourself and everything around you to a new level. In the process, you might be developing a new philosophy on life, which might have a philosophical or spiritual dimension. In this light, make sure that you listen to your dreams, because they are telling you something important. Sagittarius, today you're very perceptive and you have a good understanding of what's motivating other people. You can also read their feelings and very often anticipate their next move. This helps you not just in terms of relationships, but also in your working life. By anticipating human frailty, you can benefit from it. Capricorn, the moon continues moving through Cancer, your opposite sign. Relationships are difficult to avoid, but I don't think this is a problem. You can benefit from other people's company, and your life can be made more complete and more fulfilling. And for romantic success, it's important not to overthink the situation. Aquarius, it's a day for clearing the decks. Garbage, physical, emotional and mental, has been building up over the last few months, and you now have a chance to get rid of it. The clearance task won't be as difficult as you expect, and in the end, you'll enjoy letting go of things. At the same time, it's a good day for addressing issues relating to health and fitness. Pisces, there's not much to complain about. The moon continues moving through Cancer while aspecting the Sun and Jupiter. As a result, you'll be both lucky and creative, and you can make things happen with little or no effort. And by doing things your way, particularly the clever things requiring creativity, you'll be gaining favourable attention. So that's all I'm going to say about the 12 signs, and I'm now going to move to the I Ching. So as always, I threw 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Saturday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? So the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 8, holding together. So on the surface, this is good because it's telling us that the way to navigate today's challenges is to just be with other people, hold together with them. You know, don't try to do things alone. But mixing with anyone just for the sake of it is not a good idea, because I Ching does give a warning. The warning relates to this third line that moves. This third line moves. It moves from being broken to unbroken. And the warning here is that there's a danger that we hang out with the wrong people. So in the first instance, we do have to be careful. Yes, we need to be with people, but not anyone. So consider the people around you. Are they really suitable? Then this line, the fourth line, moves here, and then it says that, you know, in the end you're going to find the right person. There's one particular person who you do need to get on with. You need to hold together with. You know, they're wise, possibly wiser for new, and they can certainly be of great assistance. And this hexagram, number 8, holding together, it does move, and it moves to hexagram number 31, influence. I think we've had this quite recently, and it's saying, you know, as the day progresses, you know, we can trust ourselves to, you know, to be influential. It's also, you know, in the Wilhelm translation of the I Ching, it's connected with wooing, as I said a few days ago, and I think that kind of connects with the fact that the North Node is making this this aspect to the Venus-Mars midpoint at the moment. You know, North Node on the Venus-Mars midpoint is actually about wooing. It's about networking. It's about using our charms, our attractiveness to get what we want. And so this is something we should perhaps be doing. It depends on the situation. It depends on our requirements. Whether we're looking to influence people, I don't know, for business or career reasons, maybe for romantic reasons. Whatever it is, there's a chance here. And as this kind of links with the astrology, this hexagram influence, that really does make it quite pressing to see how you can take advantage of it. So, you know, look around you. What do you need? What do you want? And how can you use your charms to be successful in terms of achieving this aim? So, particularly towards the end of the day, consider that. And if you have the opportunity, well, go for it. So now let's look at my chart for the day, or my charts for the day. So I wanted to look at Kristi Noem. I suppose if you're outside the US, you might not have heard of her. Even if you're in the US, you might not have heard of her. But yeah, she's governor of South Dakota, and she is. I mean, she's a bit of a troll, really. I mean, if you look at her policies, she's just into everything that is there to troll progressives. I mean, just everything. Whatever you think a right-wing governor should be into, she's into it. Now, I should say I'm not making any comment here. Although I should say that, you know, the environment is very important to me, and she's not a friend of the environment, not at all. You know, as you might expect, she's not a supporter of abortion. She's anti-abortion. She supports growth. She doesn't seem to care about the environmental impact of growth. She supported the Keystone Pipeline. You know, when there were demonstrations against the Keystone Pipeline, she tried to bring in legislation to stop the protests. You know, going so far that if anyone were to advise the protesters, they could theoretically be sued. And this legislation she brought in was, I think it was deemed to be unconstitutional. She pushed back against, you know, these COVID restrictions, and of course she's a big advocate of the Second Amendment. She's an opponent of the legalization of cannabis. She wants to have RV parks in one of the parks, I think the Custer State Park, or I'm not sure about the details. And of course, in terms of transgender, she is not a fan of transgender overreach, and she has involved in something called women's fairness in sport. And yes, she's a Christian, and she has tried to bring in legislation about prayer in schools. So, you know, that gives you an idea of who she is, and this is her horoscope. I do not have a time for her for her birth. But in terms of her relevance, there is if there is a possibility that she is could be Donald Trump's running mate. She already has quite a lot of power simply by virtue of being governor of South Dakota. She's something of a darling of the right. If Trump's campaign in next year, comes off the rails, she is a potential presidential candidate. So she could be one day U.S. president. I mean, I doubt it, but who knows? Well, okay, I should know because I'm an astrologer, but I haven't actually looked at I haven't actually looked at a horoscope from the perspective of whether or not she's going to be president. I'm just looking at it now, what's going on here with her chart. So yes, she's a Sagittarius. So being a Sagittarius, that is a bit of a troll. I mean, Sagittarians can be real trolls. And who else but a Sagittarius would want to have a firework display in Mount Rushmore to celebrate Independence Day? As you can imagine, there's a serious fire risk there, isn't there? I would have thought so. July the 4th, high summer. But anyway, she wasn't able to do that. But I think she did hire lawyers and so forth to try to give her this right to give people the right to have fireworks in Mount Rushmore on Independence Day. So yes, a lot of Sagittarius there. Moon in Taurus. Moon in Taurus can work in different ways for different people. But the Moon in Taurus is quite fixed, and it provides a sort of a counterpoint to that Sun in Sagittarius. So, Sun in Sagittarius with Moon in Taurus. Now, Moon in Taurus can be quite a conservative sign. It doesn't like change. Things are fine the way they are without people messing it up. And Sagittarius can be a conservative sign. With Jupiter and Sagittarius, Jupiter is a moralistic sign. A moralistic planet. Jupiter has clear beliefs about the way things should be. So there is a moralizing aspect to her being governor of South Dakota. She is into prayer. She opposes legalization of cannabis, but she supports the Second Amendment. I mean, I don't know. She's not really a libertarian, as far as I can see. I mean, if you're a libertarian, you should support guns and cannabis because it's an individual choice. But no, she doesn't believe in individual choice when it comes to cannabis. But I think that's the Sun in Taurus and Sagittarius. That can make for someone who is very conservative and who is militantly, Moon in Taurus, Sun in Sagittarius. That can make for someone who is militantly conservative, who also likes to troll progressives. And it's quite an angry chart in a way, because you've got Mars. Mars is square Jupiter. Mars is sort of close square Sun. That's a bit wide, but she's got Mars square Jupiter. She seems to be quite a high energy person with all of that stuff she's into. She's not just into sort of getting on with government in a sort of a slow, methodical kind of way. She is into all sorts of things. I think she actually wanted to send the South Dakota National Guard to the border with Mexico to help with the immigration, to help prevent illegal immigration. So there's Mars square Jupiter. She's all over the place, and there seems to be a certain possibility of overreach. I mean, Mars square Jupiter. Did Mars square Jupiter really need to make a big fuss about having fireworks in Mount Rushmore? Was that really important to her? Apparently it was. Venus in Capricorn. it's kind of nice, Venus in early Capricorn. That it's a good place for Venus. It's a kind of quite a dignified place for Venus. It's kind of it's not like all that Sagittarius stuff. She's capable of dignity when she wants to be, I think. She can be sensible when she wants to be. She can, and I suppose Venus in Capricorn is quite business oriented. I mean, I think she built her former father, the farm she inherited from her father, or with her family in it. I think it was quite successful before she got into politics. So she seems to have probably quite a good business mind. That would make sense. Moon in Taurus, Venus in Capricorn. But what's really interesting about her chart, which you might not notice if you just use traditional aspects, is the fact that she has got her Mars-Saturn midpoint at 23 degrees 12 Aries. So what? Well, she has got her Sun at 752 Sagittarius, making a 135 degree aspect, 3/8 of a circle, to her Mars-Saturn midpoint. Sun on a Mars-Saturn midpoint. And I think this defines her. Absolutely defines her. Sun on a Mars-Saturn midpoint. So you might ask, well, why? It's because she almost carries her dead father's body around with her. It's something she talks about almost obsessively in her the death of her father. Her father died on March 10th, 1994. She would have been 22. She had to stop what she was doing. She had to go back. I think she had a young daughter at the time, and she had to come back, sort out the farm or whatever. And it was a devastating event, her father dying. So let's just have a look at the chart of her father dying. I don't know the time he died, by the way. But this is her father's death. This is her father's death chart. I've taken it for noon, and so this was dramatic. So probably everything changed for her on March the 10th, 1994. And you will see that when her father died, there was a Mars-Saturn conjunction. So it kind of chimes. This does work in astrology. If you've got a Mars-Saturn contact in your chart, you may be particularly vulnerable to Mars-Saturn in the sky. So she has Sun on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So it's kind of not surprising that she's sensitive to the Mars-Saturn cycle. And so her father dies. On the Mars-Saturn conjunction, and you can look at her. If you look at her solar return, if you look at her solar return for we look at her solar return for 1993, just before her father died. Okay, we don't know his exact time of birth, but you can see that at her solar return there was a Uranus-Neptune conjunction at 19 Capricorn. Sun was applying to a conjunction of Mars. In a solar return, the Sun moving to a conjunction of Mars can suggest an accident coming up. And the Moon, we don't know exactly where her Moon is, or where the moon in the solar return would be. But you can see moon in Gemini. We've sort of got a full moon in that solar return, just after. The moon is sort of opposition Mars. We don't exactly know where that is. So the solar return is kind of hinting that there may be an issue there. And so as far as her father himself, you can actually see from his chart how he died. In a way, his chart is father chart. His name is Ron Arnold. Here's his horoscope set for noon. Now, how do you think he died? Okay, you might already know how he died. It's to do with all those Virgo planets. I mean, this guy is just got so much Virgo. He's got Sun in Virgo, Jupiter in Virgo, Venus in Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, Mars in Virgo, and yeah, Chiron in Virgo if you're into Chiron as well. Yeah, he died in a grain elevator. I think there was some crust on the top of the grain, and he went in to try to break the crust up. I don't know quite how he would have tried to do that, and he got sucked in, and he died. So I associate Virgo with grain. I don't know about you, but Virgo is the harvest, and so with all those planets in Virgo, okay, that might indicate a farmer. That makes perfect sense. But it also to me, it sort of hints at his death. All that Virgo, it's just such an over the top chart. Again, it hints at his death in hindsight. Now that we know how he died. I think that makes a lot of sense. His chart is not a chart I like at all. I think it's a horrible chart myself. I mean, I don't mean horrible in the sense that bad things are going to happen to him, but he's got all that Virgo, moon in Scorpio. I mean, probably moon in Scorpio, unless he was born right at the beginning of the day. He seemed like a real nightmare of a father. Having high expectations of his children. He would Kristi Noem, I think she recounted how he took her out into the wilderness and then just sort of abandoned her and told her to come home. Apparently he was watching her as he was trying to come home, but he was into all that sort of tough love, that kind of stuff. So his death, it's interesting to look at the lunation. This is the lunation before he died. So he died on March the 10th, 1994. This is the full moon for February the 25th, 1994. So you can see that there was moon in Virgo, 713 Virgo, sun at 713 Pisces, and it links up with Saturn. So if we put Kristi Noem's chart in the middle, and we put the lunation on the outside. So she has her new. We don't know her time of birth. So Kristi Noem's sun is at 7:52 Sagittarius, and so we can see that this full moon was exactly square her sun, and we know that her sun was on her Mars Saturn midpoint. So full moon on her sun, on her Mars Saturn midpoint, and then 2 weeks later, her father died in this accident, and this completely changed her life. And since then, she's been going on and on about issues with her her father and the fact that the messed up inheritance and how how it was unfair that they had to pay a lot of inheritance tax. I mean, the reason they had to pay a lot of inheritance tax is because her father just messed up the will. He split his will and gave half of it to his wife, the other half, I think, to someone else. I'm not sure. And basically, the bit that went to his wife was not taxable, but the other bit was taxable, and that cost him a load of money. So that's a problem. It was just he made a mess of the will, but it's an axe that Kristi Noem continues to grind. That's Kristi Noem. As far as what her prospects are in terms of being vice president, or even running for vice president, she's got to get on Trump's ticket. She's got all this stuff in mutable signs. So she's got Sun Jupiter conjunction in Sagittarius, and then she's got square Mars. Now, next year, Saturn is already in Pisces, so Saturn is going to be making a square to her Sun. It's going to be making a conjunction to her Mars. She is approaching. She's approaching a Saturn square Saturn. She's already had it. So this year she's got Saturn square Saturn. So Saturn in Pisces is square her Saturn. It's going to be around again next year. So I think with these with all these Saturn aspects, I think this is going to be very difficult for her. So there are going to be some real pressures. Now, I don't have a time of birth, as I've said. You can be elected president with Saturn squares because Saturn can be related to responsibility. And it can be tough, but given she's not on, we don't know whether or not she's even going to be on Trump's ticket. We don't even know if Trump's going to be standing, so we don't really know. But I think all things being equal, I think that Saturn is going to cause a lot of problems next year. I want to make one final point, not really about the future, about the fact that with Saturn, when you're dealing with Saturn, it's a planet that's got a 29.5-year cycle, and so it's got these 7-year points. So every 7 years, we have the 7-year itch with Saturn. When we're about 7, when we're about 14, when we're about 21, 22. And then 29.5. Those Saturn squares to itself are quite important. So if we look at how she was affected by her father's death, when her father died, Saturn was at 454. Was at 454 Pisces. And so she has got her Saturn at 238 Gemini. So in other words, Saturn was square her natal Saturn when her father had his accident. And this highlights the point that when we're looking at Saturn aspects, it's always good to look at how Saturn transiting Saturn aspects the natal Saturn, because it gives us an idea about the big cycles in life, and particularly the 7 year that 7-year pattern. And so when she's 21, 22, Saturn square Saturn, that was the first sort of big crisis in her life, and then 7 years later, she had her Saturn return. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about Kristi Noem. Maybe maybe you're not particularly interested in her, in which case you're probably not listening to me. You would have stopped this video a long time ago. But if you got this far, then yeah, I hope you found her chart interesting. And I just think it's just interesting the way you've got someone who is clearly carrying around her dead father. So anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow.